Today, we have Professor Ana Bocanegra Valle with us, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Cadiz in Spain. Her main research include ESP methodology, education, English for research, publication purposes, and ESP discourse. At the same time, she has been the editor-in-chief of the LSP journal Ibérica for 8 years, and now she's book review editor for ESP Today and RESLA. She has published many articles and book chapters on ESP and intercultural communication. And today, Anna will deliver her speech on the topic, which is very interesting and very popular nowadays, which is internationalization. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. You're very kind. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Let me share my presentation with you, first of all. Okay. Is it all right? Is it all right?
Yes, everything's all right. We can
Everything
see it.
fine?
It's full screen. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. So I think we can start. Yes, okay. So let me thank you, first of all, Professor Joanna Kittergras and the co-organizer of this event, Professor Ferit Kilichkaya, for inviting me and my colleagues, Marianne and Miguel, to deliver a lecture in these very interesting webinars you've been organizing for some months already. When thinking about the focus of my lecture today, I paid attention to the name of the event itself, International Dialogue on English Language Teaching. And the term dialogue brought to my mind the discourse of the Council of Europe on culture, as I shall discuss later. So I decided that it might be a good idea to bring to this session the notion of culture and reflect on how culture and language teaching interact in today's international higher education. This is an overview of my talk. I will start with an introduction to some key terms I will be using frequently in my talk today. Then I will talk about very briefly about the educational policies laid down by the Council of Europe as a background to my talk. And because the title of my lecture is Interculturalization at Home, Raising Awareness and Creating Opportunities in Higher Education Language Classrooms, I have divided the rest of my talk in these two sections. The first one, raising awareness, and the last one, creating opportunities. And finally, I will just provide some conclusions. So let's start with the key terms. Of course, the first key term we need to talk about is internationalization. Internationalization has become a key aspect of the agenda for higher education in many parts of the world. A definition of internationalization given by the European Parliament in 2015 reads that internationalization is the intentional process of integrating an intercultural or global dimension into post-secondary education in order to enhance the quality of education and research for all students and staff and to make a meaningful contribution to society. This internationalization drive may include many activities, some of which involve students directly, like international student recruitment, that is, attracting international students for the purpose of not only generating revenues for the universities, which is important, of course, but also for creating cultural diversity and promoting intercultural communication. Student mobility Among the challenges that study abroad brings for students is the need for adaptation to a new environment and a new culture over a period of time. And this also brings benefits for language learning, like building intercultural awareness and developing language skills. English medium instruction courses. These courses have grown exponentially in recent years and make an important contribution to the internationalization of higher education and to internationalization at home activities. The second talk today, delivered by my colleague Marianne Velilla, will provide more details about English medium instruction. Thanks to internationalization at home, international and intercultural perspectives are embedded into local educational settings. This is what Elspeth Jones has referred to interculturalization at home in her work titled The Role of Languages in Transformational Internationalization. Internationalization of the curriculum, Internationalization of the curriculum at home has the potential to challenge cultural assumptions, extend knowledge, and adjust mindsets by valuing the role of cultural diversity within a broader internationalization framework. Jones 2020 claims that the adjustment or transformation of mindsets can also occur without traveling to other countries if the international experience is embedded locally. So as the title of my presentation suggests, interculturalization at home is the focus of this presentation. Now let's deal with three terms which may appear similar to many of us. These are pluricultural, multicultural, and intercultural. Pluricultural is understood as the simultaneous presence of two or more cultures in one territory. Here, cultures coexist, but they do not live together. It is a static concept. Multicultural or intercultural, however, points at the existence of different cultures that interact in dynamic and complex ways. And what about intercultural? Following Banks, the only difference between multicultural and intercultural is that of areas of influence. He says in Western Europe, the movement is often referred to as intercultural education. So multicultural or intercultural citizens live in cultural diversity and respect. Acceptance of the otherness is always present, and positive experiences are replicated on both sides. So this word cloud contains some of the terms that have come up already and some others that echo in the intercultural related literature. Indeed, international, intercultural, languages, communication, mobility, skills, competence, awareness, but also others, which are important, like otherness, the other and the otherness, respect, diversity, openness, understanding. Most of these terms will appear several times in this talk. Let's move on to part 2. Background, the educational policies in European higher education. The European higher education area has set the framework for the introduction and promotion of multicultural awareness. In all current European educational systems, and the Council has done so through various instruments. For the Council of Europe, culture and language are intertwined concepts. They are closely connected. As we shall see in this talk, culture and language are intrinsically linked to each other. The European language portfolio is a vehicle for lifelong learning of languages, for intercultural understanding and intercultural competence. This language portfolio assumes that successful second or foreign language learners will gradually develop awareness of and respect for the other and the otherness, and consequently, learners are stimulated to think about cultural differences by means of two instruments contained in the ELP, which are the language passport and the language biography. The Common European Framework of Reference for Languages incorporates the intercultural dimension into the language learning teaching process. It emphasizes the relevance of intercultural awareness and intercultural competence. Intercultural competence being developed as a set of skills known as intercultural skills. These skills are the ability, as you can see on the screen, the ability to bring the culture of origin and the foreign culture in relation with each other, cultural sensitivity and the ability to identify and use a variety of strategies for contact with those from other cultures, the capacity to fulfill the role of cultural intermediary between one's culture and the foreign culture and to deal effectively with intercultural misunderstanding and conflict situations, and finally, the ability to overcome stereotyped relationships. We'll come back to these intercultural skills in the last section of this talk when I present a practical case. And lastly, the white paper on intercultural dialogue. As I said before, this webinar today is a meeting point for an international dialogue on language teaching, and this forum nicely connects with this white paper on intercultural dialogue and the principle of the Council of Europe. So congratulations again to the organizers for choosing this title for these webinars. For the white paper, the difficulty in communicating in several languages stands out as one of the barriers to intercultural dialogue and to conducting intercultural conversations. Intercultural dialogue is defined as an open and respectful exchange of views between individuals, groups with different ethnic, cultural, religious, and linguistic backgrounds, and heritage on the basis of mutual understanding and respect. Intercultural dialogue is supported by the development of competencies, of language competencies. And these competencies are not automatically acquired, but they need to be learned, practiced, and maintained throughout life. So according to the white paper, language classrooms can serve as spaces for intercultural dialogue, and materials, for example, textbooks, can function as instruments that raise intercultural awareness and strengthen the intercultural dialogue in a global society and in culturally diverse professions. Let's move on to part 3 of this lecture, raising awareness. In this talk, I contend that language classrooms are strategic sites for raising intercultural awareness and attaining intercultural learning. And at this point, I would like to raise some questions. The first one is, does learning a language mean learning a culture? HUA 2014 has the answer to this question. Yes, it does. As we can read, learning another language inevitably exposes the learner to facts and practices of a society or community where the target language is used. For many language learners, learning about the cultural traditions and practices of other people is the primary motivation for learning their language. For others, language learning provides an opportunity to interact with the people whose language they are learning and to understand their culture and traditions. Language and culture then become intrinsically linked to each other in this specific context. So if learning a language means learning a culture, how can we introduce interculturality in the language classroom? How can language courses be helpful for intercultural learning? The ways in which culture may be handled in language courses can be multifarious. One of them would be to encourage discussion around an authentic case that is related to a particular discipline or course or country or context, and bring intercultural awareness into the language classroom. Intercultural awareness refers to the integration of knowledge, attitudes, and skills that enhances communication across cultures and nurtures successful interaction with the other. Intercultural awareness implies a change of perspective in which the emic prevails, that is, the other's culture should be understood from the inside and through the eyes of the members of that culture. Let me bring in an example from a course on English for specific purposes, and particularly on Maritime English. As I teach ESP, English for specific purposes, to maritime students, in this talk, I'll bring up some examples from this context, my own teaching context. This is an example I raise in class to warm up and foster discussion in view of intercultural awareness. It is the story of this, a sad story of this ship. You can see on the slide, the COSCO Busan. And here we read what happens with this ship. On 7th November 2007, the Hong Kong registered container ship MV COSCO Busan, the one we can see in the picture, collided with the Delta Tower of the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge, the bridge we can see in the picture. The port side of the ship was hit, a couple of tanks were breached, and 53,000 gallons of oil were spilled into San Francisco Bay. So that was a big accident. Both the pilot on board and the ship's master were blamed for the accident. What happened? The ship's radar failed in conditions of heavy fog, and consequently, and this is the important aspect here, the American pilot and the Chinese master had to rely solely on speech to maneuver the ship. Investigation concluded with a list of errors that had led to the disaster. Among them, and I'm quoting from the report that came up from the accident, among these errors, poor communication in English between pilot and master, and cultural differences in the bridge that made the Chinese master reluctant to assert authority over the pilot. So such culture-related issue gave rise to misunderstandings that confused pilot, master, and traffic services, and resulted in that accident voyage and, what's worse, $70 million in environmental cleanup costs, the death of 2,500 marine birds, 26 miles of shoreline were polluted, and fishermen and oyster farmers lost their jobs. So my maritime students, my maritime English students, as you can imagine, need to be aware, for instance, of the importance of hierarchy in the workplace, and also of the differences in using assertiveness in Eastern and Western cultures. Because as the case of this ship, the MV Busan, has attested, cultural differences can lead to terrible shipping accidents and major economic and environmental losses. So using a study on intercultural competence on board conducted by Lusenko and Stocknall in 2008, my students are encouraged to reflect on the differences between values of European and non-European countries, between the East and the West, let's say. They are encouraged to discuss on the value of respect for authority and power distance. That is, the relationship between higher ranking and lower ranking individuals, and how these lower ranking individuals react to higher ranking individuals. Certain cultures demonstrate a high power distance and accept an unequal distribution of power. They are very deferential to figures of authority, but on the contrary, individuals in other cultures question authority and expect to participate in decisions that affect them, because these cultures display a low power distance and they distribute power equally. This indeed has an effect at the workplace. This was the case of the Chinese master who felt reluctant to assert authority over the pilot and did not question or challenge the pilot's competence, therefore contributing to this serious accident. Another example is the way communication is conceived. For Western cultures, for instance, communication is expected to be direct and assertive. But this may be interpreted by individuals in Eastern cultures as impolite, aggressive, or rude. And quite on the contrary, Western cultures will interpret lack of assertiveness or indirect assertiveness as an indicator of passivity, inaction, misbehavior, weakness, lack of concern, or even laziness. However, what these Eastern individuals have in mind is respect and politeness, a desire for harmony and for avoiding confrontation. So this example has tried to show that our classrooms are, as I said before, strategic sites to raise awareness on the importance of intercultural knowledge, not only for successful communication and understanding, but also for successful job performance in today's global world. There is plenty of literature that discusses the need to teach intercultural awareness. However, there are very few publications that tell us about the means to teach intercultural awareness. But what literature agrees upon is on the fact that instruments that can be very helpful for teachers when aiming to promote the intercultural dimension and introduce interculturality in the language classrooms are learning materials in general and textbooks in particular. In a seminal report for the Council of Europe titled Developing the Intercultural Dimension in Language Teaching, Michael Byram and colleagues encourage a critical approach to learning materials so that authentic texts are used and contrasting views are always presented. We read, if a textbook presents a single perspective, then teachers can suggest that other perspectives are also possible and legitimate. One way of doing this is to find or encourage learners to find additional authentic materials which present a different view. The internet is a rich source for this. So it seems very advisable that teachers look for or encourage students to look for similar texts from their home culture and compare and contrast them. Some years ago, I conducted a study to explore the ways textbooks served as providers of intercultural awareness and creators of space for intercultural dialogue. I know that you cannot see the table well, but what I want you is to get an overall picture of what I'm talking about. I explored 10 textbooks published by prestigious publishers, Cambridge, Oxford, Garnet, etc., and from very different ESP areas, health, business, engineering, marketing, ICTs, tourism, the maritime industry. And I used 15 indicators for the assessment of intercultural competence with the aim of finding intercultural elements in these textbooks. These 15 indicators that you can see here on this column on the left were divided into 3 levels: basic, intermediate, and advanced. Very briefly, as you can see in the table, you can see the marks here. You can see that most textbooks contained intercultural elements at the basic level, which means that textbooks understand social and cultural diversity as a human phenomenon, and that individuals interact on the basis of respect towards the others. Except for 3 textbooks that you can see here. I'm trying to, let me see if this works. Okay, here, this one on hospital English, this one on business English, and this one on the English for the maritime industry. So, as I was saying, except for these 3 books, which also contain intercultural elements at more than the basic level, they contain elements at the intermediate and the advanced level. Most textbooks remain at this basic level, which means that they cover interculturality only at the surface. They try to raise intercultural awareness, but they are not articulated as a whole around the promotion of intercultural competence and intercultural learning. They will be effective in making learners aware of the self and the other, but simply based on scanty information and a reduced number of activities. Also note that 2 of these 10 books, I will try to point this one here, you see, no intercultural element at all, and here, no intercultural element at all. These textbooks deal with this one with medical English and this one with ICTs. They do not contain any intercultural element at all, which is striking given that professionals in these disciplines and fields will be often faced with intercultural encounters and intercultural communication events. So if you are a teacher of English, I would encourage you to explore the textbooks and learning materials that you use and to examine to what extent these include activities that aim at intercultural learning. Of course, if you are interested in embedding the intercultural dimension in your language classroom. And now let's move on to part 3, creating opportunities, interculturalization at home. As I pointed out before, the Common European Framework incorporates the intercultural dimension into the language learning teaching process and emphasizes the relevance of intercultural awareness and intercultural competence. And if you remember, this intercultural competence was developed as a set of intercultural skills known as, as a set of intercultural skills. We saw those before. And the case or practical activity I'm presenting now in this last section of my talk is concerned with the first intercultural skill stated by the Council of Europe. That is the ability to bring the culture of origin and the foreign culture into relation with each other. So what I'm going to present now explores the ways in which interculturality can be embedded into the ESP classroom, and I will present an activity developed within a course called Shipping Business English, whose ultimate aim was to provide students with opportunities for gaining awareness across cultures. At the same time, English is used as the means of communication, and at the same time, language is integrated with content. Even though this practical activity focuses on a very particular ESP course, as I said before, Shipping Business English, I think that it might raise the interest of all those teachers, course designers, and materials developers that need to implement the intercultural component in their language courses, particularly if they are dealing with specialized language courses. So students attended the students from attending their fourth year at university, who were following a degree on navigation and sea transport, attended this or completed this activity. The most immediate result would be to deliver a 10-minute oral presentation on a particular maritime commercial port in their country, describing port location, port facilities, terminals, handling equipment, etc., preceded by an introduction to the student's country and culture. The connection with the official syllabus was a revision session to Unit 1, Port Facilities and Services, and Unit 2, Port Management and Organization. And of course, the general aim of this activity was to take advantage of mobility students and bring foreign and home cultures together into this particular ESP classroom. The students taking part in this activity were 30 home students at their fourth year at university, as I said, who acted as audience and assessors, and 10 international exchange students who acted as speakers and presenters. The aims of this activity were to embed the intercultural dimension into the ESP teaching learning process, to raise awareness of intercultural communication within the profession, to explore home and foreign cultures, to gain an understanding of the otherness, to reflect on one's own culture for mutual understanding, to promote curiosity and openness about other cultures, and of course to revise the vocabulary, terminology, phraseology related to port services and management, that is to revise units 1 and 2 of the core syllabus, and to talk about these port services and management activities as they exist around the world. The stages for the development of this activity were, as you can see in the picture, the first one was a briefing stage, in which, and here practitioner, the teacher, that is me, and the student, the mobility student, met in a preparatory meeting. And in this meeting, the introductions were discussed and agreed, deadlines, presentation date, length, duration, visual aids, etc. And then the information to be dealt with, that is cultural topics and the target port, were also discussed and agreed. Here you can see a table with a list of potential topics and hints for discussion in this presentation, and the list of course is very varied. The second stage was the submission and revision of the draft text. Here students submit their presentation draft. I revised this draft digitally, both in content and form, and I revised it by inserting amendments, making suggestions, correcting typos. This is one of the presentations, which was about ports of Poland, of course, in honor of our host, Professor Gracias. And this is part of the real presentation. I have not prepared this. This was what the Polish student did. Okay. And so this is one of the slides. Here you have the full presentation. This is an example only. For example, this lady wrote, population is around 40 people. So this is my comment here. This is impossible. Do you mean 40 million people? please reconsider, or minimum or typos here. I commented decimals in English are preceded by a dot, not by a comma. Please replace. Or about these temperatures, are these the average minimum or maximum temperatures, or is this an exception? Because I thought, oh my God, 42 minus 42 degrees as an average temperature, that's terrible. Okay, so this is only an example to show you that revision took place. And so after this, stage 3, students submit the final text. And I revised the text once more and approved it or proposed further changes until the final document was passed. Student delivered their oral presentation. Then there was some time for classroom discussion. Home students were encouraged to ask questions and to raise topics for discussion. Then there was time for individual work, where home students answered the comprehension test, an ad hoc exercise, and they were also encouraged to express their opinion about the presentation and to assess the international students as oral speakers in terms of presentation content, visual aids, and performance. And then the presentation was uploaded at Moodle, at our Moodle platform, what we call Virtual Campus. This is part of my course, and there was this section which I called Ports of the World. So the final presentation was uploaded here together with the comprehension text, and also the key to this exercise was made available. And here in this repository of Ports of the World, you can see that we learned about Latvia and the port of Riga, about Poland and ports of Poland, about the Netherlands and Europort Rotterdam, about Russia and the port of Vladivostok, Belgian port of Antwerp, and that's it. 5 presentations. Okay. What are the main outcomes of this activity? Well, this shows that interculturality can be successfully embedded into the ESP syllabus and classroom. At the same time this happens, we are complying with the educational requirements laid down by the International Higher Education Area, and also with the demands of a global profession that uses English as the international language of communication. The oral presentations serve to provide authentic material as a baseline for oral discussion during class time. And once these presentations are uploaded at Moodle, they supplement course activities with additional materials for extra and autonomous work. Here, shipping business English learners are intercultural learners, because among others, they use language to explore different cultures. And the class itself becomes multicultural because it provides an arena for intercultural exchange and discussion. This is important in my view. Home learners are decentered in favor of visiting students, in favor of foreign learners. This is the case of this ESP classroom that has proved to be a suitable context to explore international cultures by bringing them in line with each student's home culture. Home learners are decentered in favor of visiting students, and learners are encouraged to make introspective analysis of the foreign cultures as compared to theirs. It should be noted that Spanish students, make a homogeneous group of Spanish native speakers, but the group of international students is heterogeneous by nature, as it may gather a number of nationalities. We can see here Belgian students, Polish, Russian, Dutch, Latvian students, and they bring into the classroom a variety of foreign languages and cultural backgrounds. It is not the case that only Spanish students are learning about Polish culture, to give an example, but Russian, Belgian, Latvian, and Dutch students are also becoming aware of the Polish culture. In short, intercultural classrooms provide opportunities for gaining intercultural awareness using English as the means of communication. And another very important issue, in my view, is that the English native standard is challenged in view of an international English model in which English is used as the language for international and intercultural communication and not as the native language of Anglophone countries only. As you can see here, there's no English native speaker here, but they are using English as the common language for international communication. In the third session today, my colleague Miguel Vela will challenge the need for pronunciation models and will illustrate the position of scientists for the dissemination of their research using English as a language for international communication. This activity was developed during 2 different academic years with different home and international student groups. And in both cases, the experience proved to be very motivating and mutually enriching, both for international and home students, and myself as a guide, intermediary, and facilitator in the whole process. On the one hand, international students were very thankful for the opportunity given. They highlighted in different occasions throughout our talks that they were proud to show their country and make themselves and their culture visible in an Anglo-dominated world. Some of them, which had been on board, they had had some professional seafaring experience, argued that they had never come across English-speaking natives aboard ship. So activities such as this helped to connect university life with the profession, and also to strengthen the view of ships as multicultural societies. Adjectives such as very motivating, very interesting, different, innovative, amusing, as you can see on the slide here, came up among the students' comments. And on the other hand, home students put forward very positive comments when they were invited to write, and they were invited to discuss on the presentation. And here is a sample quote from a home student after the oral presentation on the ports of Poland. Regarding the presentation given last Tuesday as a classroom activity of the course, I can say that I found it was a very pleasant way of bringing in the knowledge of a foreign language supplemented with a general overview of another culture. This type of activities fosters more entertaining learning and encourages learners to improve their relationships with foreign mates. I would like to highlight the work carried out by both foreign students and our teacher regarding the presentation content and layout. This was funny that this student highlighted that the activity encouraged learners to improve their relationships with foreign mates. There was a time when these students had been together, but they had not come closer. So after this activity, it helped to break the ice, you know, and to know, to get closer to each other. And as far as I am concerned, as language teacher, I find this, I find this notion of culture brokering or cultural brokering a handy and timely way to define my role in this particular activity. It has been my intention, or it was my intention, to act as an intermediary between groups of students of differing cultural backgrounds for the purpose of encouraging intercultural knowledge and understanding. That was in the short term. And of course, for the purpose of reducing potential cultural misunderstandings in the long run, in view of a healthy multicultural workplace. And to conclude, to wrap up my talk, let me put all the pieces of this intercultural puzzle together. And let's remember, intercultural learning is a relevant component of the internationalization agenda of higher education. In the European higher education area, the Council of Europe has worked hard in promoting intercultural awareness through various instruments, the ones we've seen, the white paper on intercultural dialogue, the language passport, etc. Language learning has an important role to play in view of interculturalization, particularly to avoid stereotyping individuals, to develop curiosity and openness to otherness, and to discover other cultures. It has become clear, I think, or I hope, that learning a language means learning a culture. Language classrooms are, this is what I contend, strategic sites for intercultural learning and spaces for intercultural dialogue. And we teachers serve as intercultural brokers in this process. Language courses that foster intercultural awareness, that integrate the intercultural component in the curriculum, that promote an intercultural dialogue, and that engage students with cultural others while learning a foreign language, embrace the principles and goals of what has been named interculturalization at home. And these are some of the references I've used to prepare my talk. If you are interested, of course, I don't know, maybe upload it at the chat or whatever, or send it to you if you send me an email. And I can only say yeah, and thank you. Danke, merci, grazie. Sorry, but my thank you in Turkish is not very good. Teşekkür ederim, or something like that. I think it should be said. And
fine, yeah.
Yes.
Teşekkürler, yes.
Okay, good. And so thanks very much for inviting me to this webinar. And of course, I would be happy to answer any questions. And perhaps you can have ideas you could share with me, with us. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Muchas gracias. I'm impressed, as always, listening to you. Yes, first of all, I will ask to our participants, would you like to ask any questions? Would you like to share any comments after this thought-inspiring presentation, thought-provoking presentation of Anna? Do you have any questions? Would you like to share maybe something? It's time and place to you know, to also to share. That can be motivating. You can read in the chat box great approval and words of thanks after your presentation. So maybe I will start with a question. My question is, that was of course great, because I think we still do not talk enough about intercultural communication, although there is plenty, seemingly plenty of contributions concerning ESP. Still, it's not enough. And my question is, Anna, do you think that there should be the difference, or clearly it would facilitate the understanding of the topic if we distinguish between intercultural competence in general and specialized intercultural communication?
Do you mean if we should embed that in the classroom?
First of all, if we should distinguish between because in many cases we are talking about intercultural communication in general. So we implement examples that are general. Your great example was really great because it referred to the certain ESP field. But I'm afraid there are not so many of them, and also referring to the certain professional situations. Many authors of manuals think that it's enough just to explain that in I don't know, in Spain we give how many free kisses, am I right? And in France too, and that's two
kisses in
two
Spain.
kisses, okay, and that's it, okay, but in certain professional fields we should also refer not only to professional examples, but also look closely into this professional setting.
Yes, well, the culture is a very wide concept because and I find it also difficult to organize also between, as like my previous example, the East and the West. And because we also have cultural differences within our own country as well. For example, in Spain, there are cultural differences in general between people from the north and people from the south. And also in Europe, we cannot talk about the European culture as a whole, because there are differences between all the countries have their own culture. So it is difficult to sort of try to organize or divide culture into preset groups and try to refer to those groups. But at least we can, with examples, we can raise awareness, and so they can realize that it is something important, and it can lead to misunderstandings and miscommunication. And this can be something tricky in particular professions. For example, in business.
Especially, I agree.
In business, or as the example here on board ship, that Chinese master was the head of the group, but he was not, because of his cultural origin, he did not feel confident enough to tell the pilot on board, no, I'm not going to do what you are telling me. He did not question what the other was saying, even though he knew it was wrong, but simply because it was against his culture. And so that led to the accident. And to teach culture with a syllabus and all that, I think it is difficult, because they are not watertight compartments. All cultures are not compartments. But at least if we raise examples like those, our students can see that there are the differences, and that those differences can impact on our communication, and they can lead to a successful or communication, or a successful event, a successful communicative event, or to a disaster.
Thank you very much, Anna. I see. Yep. Sorry.
No, I read that somebody said it's a pity I'm unmuted, I cannot talk to you.
It is possible. So, please do raise your hand, and then Ferit will unmute the person. Okay, but please, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and you will be unmuted. So that will be easier. We have two questions. Maybe in the meantime, I will ask them. There are two questions on the chat box, or maybe the people who wrote the questions would like to ask them in person, or should I read them?
I can read here. How do you think Britain's departure from the European Union will affect intercultural dialogue? Well, let's remember that the English language is not only British possession, and so in the example I raised before, well, I can tell you, for example, as I told you, I teach Maritime English students. It is known that only 1 out of 10 seafarers is a native English speakers. And in my classrooms, as I said before, many students said that they had been navigating for 3 or 4 years. They had some experience on board, and they had never ever come across an English native speaker, but they were speaking English all the time. So this is a question of whether English as an international language is something that belongs to British people, or is it something that belongs to everybody because it is used globally. So if we think that it belongs to all of us that use English for international communication, maybe Britain's departure would not affect the intercultural dialogue badly, I think, if I explained myself clearly enough.
Okay, and there is another question.
Joanna, just a second.
Okay.
Yasemin Hocam, Professor Kırkgöz would like to.
Okay, so maybe now the question from our.
Yasemin Hocam, I've made you the co-host. You can turn on your microphone and webcam if you wish.
Okay, thank you very much, Ferit Hocam. Well, I don't have a question, but I'd like to express my welcoming remarks to Anna. And thank you very much, Ferit Hocam and Joanna, for inviting dear Anna for this webinar. It has been a very, very insightful talk, and we have learned a lot. We have discovered a lot about the issue of multiculturalism, intercultural competence, and another good point about this was how Anna presented integrating this multiculturalism into an ESP class and illustrating it with an example. Thank you very much, Anna, and welcome to Turkey.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your comments. Yes, because when the title of the webinar is intercultural, international dialogue and English language teaching. So I see these are two sides of the coin, the internationalization side and language classrooms. So I try to apply what I said to my everyday teaching.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thank you very much. And one more question. How can teachers deal with learners' negative divergent attitude towards other culture? Given appropriate materials be provided, how can teacher intervene and alleviate that?
Well, that's a difficult question. Well, I guess, well, first you have to discover or to identify that there's a negative attitude in the classroom towards the otherness, okay? I found that having mobility students in the classrooms is a good way to work on this integration. Sometimes mobility students or international exchange students are in the class, but they just come to class, and then when the class is finished, they leave the classroom, and that's it. And I thought that it would be a good idea to integrate them, to make them participate actively in what we were doing, so that they became important in the classroom. because home students are the majority and home students have a common language. But if you give these students opportunities to step in and share whatever they have, talking about themselves, their culture, their countries, etc., I think that's a good way to break the ice. Yes.
Thank you very much. I guess we'll stop at this moment with the question part. If there are more questions, I would like to ask if you could write your email address. So
I will write it.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again for your great contribution. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thanks to
that
you
was
for
great.
inviting me.